Hey Shirin, before we start off, I'd like to take a minute to talk to our listeners about why we're doing this webinar. Uh, Product marketing, it's risen quite a lot in the last decade or so, and the definition of product marketing is still hazy. Now, when I got into this field about 5 years ago, it was scary. I did not know how to make the transition, and there were quite a lot of resources online that was helpful. But ultimately, the ones who helped me out were one-on-one conversations with product marketers. And what I realized is that we're in 2020, and the path into product marketing is still quite hazy. And once you're in, how do you climb the hierarchical ladder as well? So quite a few people reach out to me with these questions, and I reach out to quite a few people with these questions as well. So to answer all of this, Sudeep and I, we're talking to successful product marketers such as yourself to understand what it took for you to get into product marketing and how you climbed the ladder. So we are hoping to hear some of your experience, your learnings, and insights that you might have.
Sure, that sounds great. I'll give a quick background to myself, but first I wanted to say that I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about product marketing more. I agree with you that it's still somewhat of a new function at many organizations. So there's a lot of questions still about it. So I think the more that we as product marketers can talk about this, the better. So thank you for doing that. So quick background, my name is Shirin, and my background is in product marketing the last 8 or so years. I started in product marketing in 2012 up until now. So I was at Constant Contact for my first position at product marketing in the email marketing space, B2B, focused on small business. I ended my last role at Bright Cove in the video platform space. And I was an individual contributor, then became director and led a team of 4, which was a great experience we can talk about in a bit. But yeah, I left that and started my own consulting business about 1.5 years ago. So right now I focus on helping organizations set up their foundation for product marketing, get some of that positioning, messaging, sales enablement work set. And I always say a really successful project or initiative that I do with an organization is when they say, oh, I need a full-time product marketer now. And I usually say, oh, that's great. That's probably not me because I'm not looking for that right now. But I'm really happy to help an organization see the value in product marketing.
I got it. I think it's an exciting journey, right? From heading a pretty big team with a 9 to 5 job and then starting your own business. How was that experience? And what was it that pushed you to take the plunge?
Yeah, I mean, a few factors. So I would say both personal and professional. I've always thought about starting my own business. And I don't know if this is the only one or the final one, but for now, it's where my passion is to continue in product marketing, but do it in a different way. I wanted to have more ownership into what I was working on, be able to kind of do more of the work. Although I really enjoyed managing a team, I had an amazing team. I'm still in touch with them. I miss doing some of the execution work and seeing that impact right away. So I'm able to do that when I work with clients because I'm typically the first product marketer. So that was another reason that I wanted to make this shift and focus on this target. But honestly, I'm really enjoying it. And I learned a lot about just starting a business and then really narrowing in on what can I focus on because I know we'll probably talk about this, but product marketing can be so many things. So how will I in my consulting business focus? Because if I pitch myself as all these things in product marketing, that itself is confusing. So I've had to clarify definitions for product marketing because of my job now.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that product marketers around the globe are facing, right?
Yeah.
I think if you pick out 5 product marketers at random, I'm pretty sure all 5 of them will have different KPIs and different hierarchies and tasks being hurled at them. So what's your take on all of this? I think your perspective is going to be really useful because you worked in larger companies, you worked across different levels in the hierarchy, and now you're working in startups as well.
Yeah.
So how would you define product marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a definition, so I've had to give this definition for a lot of companies. So how I define product marketing is it's our responsibility to share a product story that's very consistent and resonates with our target audiences. All those words are really important. Consistency, resonating with a target audience, product story. And we do this through 3 main channels: product, marketing, and sales. Those are the 3 channels, 3 teams that we work with the most. So that's a definition I give. And actually, usually when I give that, people say, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we're not the corporate story. We're not the brand story. We're the product story. And how do we really shine light to the product, elevate it, make sure it's consistent with positioning, and then how do we get that out into the market through those channels?
Okay, so would you say that anything that falls in that ballpark is something that a product marketer should pick up? But are there certain tasks that a product marketer should say no to?
Yeah, so I always say it's an important practice to be able to say no. I think that we should always allocate 70% of our time to very concrete projects that fit that definition. And very likely 20-30% of our time is going to have to be flexible. There will be requests for projects. Now, of course, if it's a project that's so obvious it's for sales, that's not what I mean. It doesn't mean we take it on just because we're such nice people. I think that we have to always ask the question, does this fit into the product marketing definition and the overall goals that we have as a product marketing team, and use that kind of as a gauge in order to decide, are we going to work on it or not? And what I always like to say around this is you can say no, but you can also always keep a backlog. So you don't say no and just forget about it. What I've done in the past is I keep a spreadsheet of all the ideas. And I say, I can't get to this right now for XYZ reasons, our priorities, our goals, but I will put this here and we can stay in touch about it.
Got it. I think that's a really good way to divert a couple of tasks that are thrown your way. And let's take a step back, right? When you do speak to these entrepreneurs or co-founders, how do you go about educating them about product marketing? And how can a product marketer who's joined the company educate the management and other folks about what product marketing is all about?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I think regardless if you're a consultant or you're doing a contract position or you're already part of a product marketing team, there's going to be some level of education because this role is still fairly new. So what I've done in the past is I essentially actually put a product marketing roadshow together, a slide deck, pretty high level, but what is the mission? The same thing you asked me, what's the definition of product marketing? What is our mission? Why do we exist? And then get a little more granular. Here's our team, if there is a team. This is the responsibilities we have, the core pillars it falls under, which quickly, the highest level pillars I can think of are positioning work, messaging work, market competitive work, launch, sales enablement. Those are probably the primary top of mind right now. There might be a couple others. But putting that together and actually going around to key stakeholders across, again, sales, marketing, and product. A couple members from each, those that have influence, those who you need buy-in from, and really go set up those 30 minutes. I know it can seem cumbersome. It may take a lot of time, but that work is really important to show the value. And when you do that, you're setting the stage for later, for when you do say no or not now. It's because this is what product marketing is for, and we went through that education and remind them of that.
Got it. And now that you've educated the company, the other beast that we need to handle is the manager sometimes, who probably might not have a product marketing background. Now, how would you go about educating them and managing them?
Yes. So probably less managing them, but I would educate. And there's 3 ways I would probably think about this. Is a similar slide deck. Probably share that first with your manager. You need your buy-in first from the person that's managing you. Assuming they believe in product marketing, they also want to do their job well because they're managing you. They would find value in just learning more about product marketing and look to you as the expert. So I would just start by sharing that deck and that information. They also, also go into that. The second way is also go into that with some data. So what I mean by data is not necessarily numbers, but go talk to the other key stakeholders. This doesn't all have to happen in one meeting, but at a later time, meet with your manager, show that you met with these stakeholders and what their input was for product marketing, what they need from the team. It shows that you did your homework a little bit and got the information you needed to be able to say, hey, this is why we're important and this is why we have to prioritize this work. And then lastly, although I wouldn't recommend explicitly saying this to your manager, but to think in the back of your head, ultimately your role is to make your manager look good. Every direct report's role is to help their manager. So you are helping them by educating them because they're going to look more intelligent about product marketing. They're going to be in other meetings that you're not in with the C level or VP level, any of that. So they need to be able to talk about it. So finding a way to say that to your manager, that, I want you to feel best prepared when you're in these meetings. I would love to teach you more or share more about product marketing, will help kind of welcome them in to learn more about it.
Got it. And I'm coming back to educating the entire company, right? Some of the work that product marketers do are high level strategy work that take their own time to have an impact on the business.
Yeah.
So if I do a webinar today, it's easy to say, hey, I have had that many registrations, and
Right.
hence with the conversion rate, this is the kind of business I might generate. So the impact is short term and it's apparent. The attribution is easy. Now, but some of the product marketing work, the attribution is quite hard. Now,
Yeah.
how should a product marketer go about showcasing the work they've done and the impact they've had on the organization?
Yeah. So I think you need to find opportunities to showcase. So that could either be an existing program that is at the company, for example, an all hands meeting, as simple as cross-functional meetings, volunteering to present in those. Those are all opportunities to show what you're working on, and doesn't all have to be quantitative. It can be, we are working on launch plans for a new product coming in a few months and wanted to show you some of those tactics. Hasn't happened yet. There's no metrics yet, but let me show you everything that's going into it. Another way I would really recommend is, what other kind of product marketing programs can you put together to showcase? So one thing we did at Brightcove was we sent a monthly product marketing newsletter out to the whole company. Actually, we started out only sending it to marketing and sales, and then we actually heard others wanted to hear what we were doing. So they heard about it and they said, oh, can I get that newsletter? Because we talked about new features that were coming up, webinars that we had coming up, team news, new hires, and people were just interested to see what was happening. So you have to kind of create this yourself in a way, and just find the opportunities to showcase.
Got it. And have you ever been subjected to a few comments on the work that you've shown? Because what I'm afraid of is that on a personal note, I might be an extrovert, but I am a little shy in the organization. I'm a little afraid of talking too much about the work that I do and the work I'm supposed to do. How do you maintain that balance?
Yeah, so if you find yourself maybe not ready to go and present at a big all hands meeting, that's where the newsletter option, I would say, comes in well. It's an email, maybe it's not even a formal newsletter, an email. Once a week email sent to some key members saying, this is what I'm working on. That is a little bit less overbearing and less overwhelming. Is find the method that works for you. Another that we've done is created Slack channels. So I have Slack channels for launch teams, Slack channels for just marketing, and you can go in there, give updates, talk about what you're working on. That you don't even have to talk, you're just typing. So it's a very, I think you're right, it's common that not everybody is ready yet or willing. And if you're more junior, you might not yet have that confidence. A, I think you'll get there, but then B, finding other ways to do it.
Got it. And talking about getting there, right? I've noticed that usually, since the product marketing function itself is not well defined, it's not very often that a director of product marketing hires a product marketing manager. Sometimes you're the only product marketing manager who's joined, or a product marketing associate. Now you're tasked with, you've done the education successfully, you've had impact on the business, and now it's about crafting yourself a development plan within the organization. Now, because it's a new sector, quite a few organizations don't have a traditional hierarchy that can be followed. Now, how can a product marketer go about crafting this for himself or herself?
Yeah. So I think there's two things you can combine for a product marketer's development plan. One is, there are some more traditional templates online for development plans. I'm not saying you go and exactly copy that, but get some ideas from that around verbal and communication skills, leadership skills, things to look for in any employee, actually. And then combine that with going online. If you're the only product marketer, go online and look for job descriptions of the level above you. So if you look for that, you'll be able to see kind of what are the requirements of that job, so that you can essentially draft what you need to do to get there, if that makes sense. And then ideally, you're going to combine those two, the templates you found online with the job descriptions, and add, some rows or what, if this is a spreadsheet, let's say, that's what we did. We had a spreadsheet that we did for our development plan, rows and columns, whatever, that bring those two together. Lastly, I would say for development plan, I'm a big believer in 360 feedback. So product marketer themselves may volunteer and say to their manager, as part of my development, I'd love to maybe twice a year, every 6 months, ask for feedback from my peers. And it's going to be hard for a manager to say no. I mean, that's just asking for feedback. It shows that you really care about your work. And that's another way to help boost yourself in your dev plan, is to get that feedback from others.
Got it. Is it okay to ask for a designation from the manager? What do you think about it? Is it good practice?
What do you mean by resignation?
A designation.
Oh, designation.
A new designation. Yeah.
As far as what, like new people to work with, or what do you mean?
Yeah, it could be you're a product marketing associate and you want to jump to a product marketing manager.
Oh, like bringing that up. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. 100%. I think most of the time you have to be the one to bring that up.
Got it.
Of course, that doesn't mean managers aren't thinking about good managers are thinking about your career development. They should be thinking about that. However, I think 70, 80% of the time you need to be the one to bring that up. And I always say there's a fine line with pushing too much. You don't want to sit nagging about it.
Yeah.
But you also need to show you're ambitious and persistent and really care. And ultimately, why? You're going to provide more for the organization the higher up you go. So you always have to show how that benefits the company.
I got it. So I think summing up our conversation so far, I think it's a two-way street. The employer and the manager should put some effort to understand what product marketing is all about and do that due diligence before they go ahead and hire. And from a product marketing side as well, you're responsible for educating the organization because the entire job role is quite new. So we've seen from the product marketing side, right? Now let's look at from the company side. Now, when do you think a company should have their first product marketing hire?
Yes, I definitely get that.
You can plug in your services here.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I definitely get that question a lot. So I always say that you want to have a product at least 70 to 80% developed. I'll use developed in quotations because I don't necessarily mean all the engineering work is done, but you have pretty solid wireframes. You know what it's going to look like. You have an idea of the core features, 70, 80%. I say 80% because we all know in tech, everything is fast changing. Things are going to get updated very fast, of course, but your core product is there and you have a pretty good idea of your persona. A little bit of product marketing is testing that persona. So again, it doesn't have to be 100%, but if you're saying, oh, I have no idea who my target is, I mean, that's already a problem because how are you developing the product if you don't know what the pain points are and what you're solving for? So those questions should have already started, but it's usually at that point, product, persona, pretty good idea, that a product marketer should come in and I would say really early start positioning work and get that kind of groundwork going.
So this is pre-product market fit.
Yes, I mean, there has to be some product market fit already tested in the concept phase from the product side. Otherwise, how are we developing anything? So there has been very early concept testing. Usually the product managers own that in the beginning. Of I have an idea, there's something I think is going to be a need. Let me put this out into the market, talk to some of our users. If that didn't happen, then we have to go back and start there. But if that happened, now we're at a phase that the product is more or less set. That's when I'm talking about that you hire someone. Because some of the other product market fit, you may not need to hire yet. Either you can do contractor, you could have product managers take on some of that for a bit. But ultimately, to really get a person in-house, starting some positioning work, that's what I'm answering more so.
Got it. And so what kind of work or product marketing work comes up in companies in these early stages?
Yeah. I would say there's three main ones, actually, sometimes a fourth. Positioning work is always first. Almost all of my clients have started there. And that's not related to size of company. It's actually just related to they haven't had a product marketer yet. That's the theme.
Got it.
From there is customer-facing messaging. If you don't do your positioning, you're not yet going to be able to do your customer-facing messaging. And then from there, it's working through all the channels, working with marketing channels, sales enablement, sometimes product, in-product messaging, working closely with product managers to write messaging docs. However, in that bucket, I would actually say these specific customers are really focused on sales enablement. My personal experience has been more enterprise levels. That's why I'm saying I have done some direct B2C, but B2B, more enterprise level, definitely as a sales team usually. And for that, there's usually more of a need for sales enablement. So pitch decks, one-pagers, scripts, feature documents, feature briefs, those are the ones that have been most common.
Got it. And now we spoke about the hard skills, right? That might be required in an average startup or a company having their first product marketing hire. But from a company side, what should they look for in a person other than the hard skills you spoke about?
Yeah. So besides the hard skills, and sometimes depending on what the role is going to grow into, you don't necessarily have to find someone that's already had product marketing experience. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Depends if you want that person to build a team or not and do more high level strategy, then I would say probably they should have some experience. But if not, I think somebody else could learn. And that brings me to the soft skills. So I think, especially in product marketing, where we work with so many different teams, so many different personalities, so many different projects at the same time, there are some key soft skills. One is ability to really create and build relationships. And I mean authentically, not just random relationships. Back when we were actually in offices, I would set up coffee meetings once every couple of weeks, set up some time, and you just start building the relationship. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk about work, but I knew this person is going to be really helpful. We can be helpful to each other. It's not just one way, it's two-way. I can help them, they could help me. So build that. So finding someone who really has those qualities, which is not easy to see, but you can kind of get an idea from references and talking to them.
Got it.
The other is project management. I think that's obvious, but being able to be very organized, I think is very important in this role, more so than other roles, because we always have so much on our plate. The third I would say is curiosity around the product. We need to go into the product, play with the product, test it out. You want to find someone that's always interested to learn. So I think that's another one that's really good to look into. And then overall, our verbal and communication skills. Like you said, it doesn't mean always presenting to big audiences, but we need to write a lot. We need to share our information. We need to present in meetings very often. So somebody who can present themselves, I would say, has a pretty good level of confidence that can build. I've had team members that work on that with me, and we've gotten to a great place with them where they've built more confidence to present in the past when I was managing a team. So those are probably the primary. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but the primary soft skills, I would say, to try to get at when you're interviewing.
I think stakeholder management is up there.
And you're working with, so as part of thank you for that. You're working with so many different teams. Every stakeholder has their own needs. This is why we get so many projects. They have their own desires, own priorities. So being able to manage expectations, that's why I say, instead of saying no, put it on a list, show them that it's on your radar, but you're not yet. That's helping build a transparent relationship and giving them that visibility.
I got it. And I think as product marketers, you're often interacting with teams that have different agendas. It could be the sales team who wants that one extra feature to close that enterprise deal, and the product team saying, "I'm not going to build that feature because it's going to take the product away from what it's meant to be." And you have to balance both of their egos sometimes. So, it's still a work in progress for me.
It is, and you're often the product marketer is the middle person.
Yes.
Who has to navigate.
One who gets squeezed, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, oh God, what am I going to say to this person? What am I going to say to that person? I mean, sometimes just bring them all together with you. Maybe we should just all talk together and not talk siloed.
Got it. And I think that's something that's risen in the past few years. I've realized that traditionally a lot of companies were siloed, and the marketing used to talk to each other, sales. Right. But now I think a lot of agile companies, they need to be cross-collaborative to pull off anything important, because there are quite a lot of challenges, right? And I think that it's a skill that product marketers can use as they climb the ladder, as they go to the V-suite as well. So just curious, are there any recommendations that you might have on where one can pick up stakeholder management? Any books, any blogs that you might recommend?
Oh, to go up the ladder?
No, especially in stakeholder management. If somebody were to
I don't have books at the top of my mind. I think anywhere that you can bring more just tips, if you can bring cross-functional groups together from different departments, that's bringing all the different stakeholders. I mean, physically into a meeting, in person one day together, that's already going to create visibility into what everyone's working on and everyone's different needs, priorities, questions. So I'm a big believer in transparency, really being open about why a product's not going to work on it. Let's share it very openly to sales, why that's not going to happen. Sales should openly explain why they need a certain feature. So I don't have books on the top of my mind right now on that. It's a little bit of just learning how to read people,
Got it.
understanding each person's needs and motivations, and that's really part of building relationships.
Makes sense. I'm sorry I put you on a spot there.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. I mean, if you have any book recommendations, let me know.
I've stumbled upon this website called Sharebird. They do product marketing AMAs, and I've learned quite a lot on stakeholder management there because it's a bunch of folks like this asking really interesting questions to senior folk, and they take their own time to answer it. So
Sharebird is the name?
yes.
I'll
It's
check
an
it out.
exceptional site, yeah.
Yeah.
I've posted quite a few questions there as well. So that's where I've learned. And I think it's
Yeah.
from experience
Great.
as well.
I didn't know. Yeah.
And it's from experience. You screw up a few times when you realize, hey, that's not the way to do stakeholder management. And yeah, and I think as you said, transparency and having the prioritization right, it really helps. Okay, moving on. Now, going back to the topic we were speaking about companies having their first product marketing hire. I have seen a lot of companies being unable to support the product marketing hire in an optimal way. It could be unrealistic expectations. It could be not giving enough time for them to grow into the role itself. So, what do you think a company should do to support the product marketing hire and create an environment where they can perform at their best?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, from a managerial perspective, I would say especially for a new hire, anywhere that you can make introductions for your new product marketer is really important. Introduce them to the key members of the team, send an email, help set up that first meeting perhaps, or join them in the first meeting because you're trying to give them some visibility and help build that relationship for the new person. Two is because our role is so cross-functional, we're going to need our manager at times to help open the door, help remove roadblocks for us. And sometimes, when I was just starting out at Brightcove, for example, I was hired as a senior product marketing manager. Yeah, senior product marketing manager. And so it was just myself and my boss. We were only two people. We grew the team later, but we were only two. And, he had to help me a lot because I was new. I didn't have all the relationships, but he did. He had been there for 2 years. So he was very supportive and opened those doors for me. So a big part of it falls on the manager. I would also give a tip that find someone in HR that you feel comfortable. That takes time. Build a relationship, get to know them, make sure you can trust them. I had that person at Brightcove, and I was able to go to her and be very open about what's going on. If I'm looking for promotion in the next year, how does she think I can get there? Again, depends on who, depends on their role. HR is a very big department, so there's different. There might not be an HR department in some small companies, so it all depends. But my advice is if there is that person that can also help support this person, especially if it's a new role.
Got it. I think having a buddy at work really helps, and I've joined my current organization during the pandemic, so I really haven't met anybody yet. So
That's a whole other challenge. Yes.
yeah, talk about it, especially for a cross-functional role. But what I've noticed is having informal conversations, despite having a very busy day, it really helps. Because my wife frowns at me when I'm talking about informal stuff in the middle of Monday morning, and I say this is the only water cooler talk that I get. And
so true.
Yeah, sometimes you can be efficient, but then in pursuit of that efficiency, you might lose out on a few relationships, which are very important as a product marketer.
I just started working with a new client, and I joined one of their marketing meetings 2 days ago. It was my first day working with them, and she told the person leading the meeting, she said, "Oh, by the way, Shirin, the first few minutes we just talk, like we just hang out, because that's our only time. That we can all just like, hey, how are you? What's going on? How was your weekend?" So she was just letting me know, like, we're not going to start talking about the topic yet. I was like, oh yeah, like this is what we used to do in the office. So right now it's a very different environment. And actually when I was thinking about starting consulting, one of my worries, because I was going to be mostly remote. Before COVID, I was half remote. This made me fully remote, but I would still go in Boston, for example, to some of my clients because they were there. But I was concerned about how will I build cross-functional relationships online, like as a consultant. And it is possible, but you have to make more effort, like you said. Sometimes you just have to like set up an informal chat, virtual coffee, and now we're all doing this. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. We just need to socialize sometimes.
got it. Just a curious segue here. You mentioned about remote work and product marketing. Do you think product marketing can be conducted 100% remote as you occupy higher and higher positions and more impactful positions in the organization? An honest
Um,
answer.
Two-part answer. I think right now, because everyone is remote, my answer is yes. When there is a time that it's more hybrid, people are starting to go in again in the next year or so. More junior level, I think, is possible fully remote. But I think when there's some people that are going to be in an office, higher level, one day VP, C levels, it will benefit the product marketer if they want to work up to also have FaceTime. So
Yeah,
I would say if you're looking to go up the ladder, now we're all equal, right? Because everybody's home. But once that changes, it's going to help the person to not be 100% remote, is my opinion.
got it.
For me as a consultant, I'm not looking to grow at the company. So I'm always going to be remote while I'm consulting.
Yeah,
So I'm just used to that, but I'm not looking to grow in that company. I hope
yeah,
that
that
makes
makes sense. There goes my dream of working on Sri Lanka
sense.
uh, on from the beach. But yeah, I mean, this is something that a bunch of us were talking about as well, and the answer that we concluded was very similar to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Okay, moving on. You spoke about Brightco. You've joined them as a senior product marketer, and then you went on to lead a team and build a team. How was that experience?
Yeah, so I was number two on the team, like I said, and then we were almost, I think, 9 or 10 people by the time I left, almost 4 years later, not quite. It was great. I mean, I was lucky in ways because the team that I ended up managing, three were internal and one was a hire I made. The hire I made actually was before I was director. I can't remember exactly. I think I was still senior product marketing manager. Maybe I just transferred to director when I made that hire, hired her externally. The other three were actually already on the team or at Bright Cove, and they transferred over. So it's a little bit different than building a team from scratch. But I love the experience. I mean, having an opportunity at a company to both be an individual contributor and manager was a great experience for me. I was able to see two different sides. So once I started managing the team, I stepped away from some of the day-to-day work and the execution. I still did some, but it was more strategic, being in other meetings that I didn't have the opportunity to be in until I essentially had more of a high-level title, and you've established your reputation a little bit more at the organization. So I really liked that. And I liked both. I mean, I liked being an individual contributor. You feel you really have impact. You're doing things. And then I had to kind of sit back when I was a manager and just manage the team, make sure they're supported, pros and cons. I missed doing some of the work, but I really loved mentoring them and coaching them. So I always see both sides to everything. So I think there's pros and cons to both.
Okay. So Shirin, at Brightco, how was your experience overall in building the whole team? You mentioned that a few people moved from other teams into the product marketing team itself. Do you want to shed light about how you recruited them and how you actually vetted them?
Yeah, of course. So one, I hired externally. So I worked with our HR department. We had a pretty big HR department to clarify what I was looking for. This was for a product marketing manager role, not senior. So we found some job descriptions that fit that. And then I actually happened to get an introduction through somebody I knew. That's how I met her, somebody who referred her. So I interviewed, but we interviewed many people before her. And I really was looking at a lot of those soft skills. Yes, if they have some product marketing experience, that was great. That was preferred, 2 to 3 years of experience for what we needed. But I was also just looking at how they presented themselves, how they fit culturally with the company. For a company that size with a lot of people. The company was about 500 employees. That was really important. Well, any size. If you're 10 people, it's maybe even more important culturally to fit. So I was really looking for that in the external. 3 others that were internal transfers, they joined product marketing before they reported into me. So what's interesting is that we were all in the same team. Then, because I was in the product marketing role longer, I got promoted to director, and then they ended up reporting into me. And actually, before I formally managed them, I took a team lead role. So that wasn't an official job change, but what happened was our manager left. So we had this gap period to fill that role. And I volunteered and said, I've been here the longest in product marketing. There were members that were here longer, but in different roles. So in product marketing, I was there the longest. I'd love to grow my career and become a manager at some point. Could I take a team lead? It was not a salary increase, no official job title change. I didn't change it on LinkedIn, but internally I did. I added team lead to the end of my title once they said that that was a good idea, because they needed someone to help lead the team because our manager left. So I, again, just kind of find the opportunity, bring it up, ask. And that's how I transitioned into managing and the whole team. So for me, it was not really building from scratch. Just my experience wasn't that way. It was a little bit like team lead, figure out the pieces. But then once the team got together, I had to figure out kind of what is everyone's role. So we essentially had 2 that were very focused on product launches, and then 2 more on content, product briefs, things like that. So we kind of split it up in different ways.
Got it. I think it's a good move, but a challenging one nonetheless. So
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you address them?
In managing a team?
Yeah, right after the transition.
Yeah. So one was actually just figuring out everybody's role. So I was now taking on a team of 4. How are we going to split up the work? Where are people's strengths? I'm not saying I did that perfectly. I had to kind of figure it out. And not only their strengths, but what were they interested to do? So I asked everybody those kinds of questions. Challenge, I think, was for me personally, I was stepping into different high-level meetings. And I'll admit, I didn't always know. Like, they call it imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't know if I can be in this meeting with the VPs and the CEO. And, you don't know all the time. You're not used to that. So it's very normal to say, oh my God, I'm walking, and I was physically in an office. So I'm walking into a meeting and presenting to the CEO. Oh my God. So yeah, of course you get a little bit uncomfortable. You get a little nervous. That was challenging, but the more I did it, I became more comfortable. And I honestly think it all comes to relationships. If you have a good relationship and you build more personal relationships, you won't see them as anything fearful, like, oh, they're the CEO. In the end, we're all people. And I think if you try to view it that way, of course, you have to respect them and they have different priorities and goals in mind. But I tried to always kind of have a personal connection. And that helped me kind of relieve that feeling. But I would say those are the 2 biggest, just figuring out the team's roles, and then myself in these new meetings, how I wanted to present myself and be there.
And what about the tasks that you want to delegate and the tasks that you want to pick up yourself? How do you do that? Was it based on what is...
The ones I needed to delegate?
Yeah, how did you choose that? How do you strike that balance? Because it might be an exciting project that you want to get you want to execute it yourself, but it's also important to delegate a few tasks as well. So how did you choose? How did you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, if it was a project that I thought a member of my team would be interested in and able to do, so it wasn't so high level, I first would delegate it. Not because I didn't want to do it, but I really believe to be a good manager, you want to elevate your employees. So give it to them, because in the end, you look good too. You're a reflection of your team. If your team does a good job, you're going to look good. If they don't do a good job, you're not going to look good. And same in reverse. So those I would delegate. If I knew somebody was interested in it and it was not a super high level, really challenging, like it had to be someone more senior doing it, I would delegate it. Otherwise, I would take on the project then. So that's kind of how I used it. So it wasn't really, oh, this is exciting, I want to do this. I always tried at least to think about my team first and make sure they're doing the stuff that keeps them excited.
Makes sense. So in addition to relationships and keeping your team's interests in mind, would you have any advice for first-time product marketing leaders?
Really get to know your team, even personally, as much as you can. Get to know what they're interested in, what gets them excited about work. What do they love about product marketing? We all know there's things we don't like about product marketing. That's okay. Just know what they really like and what they're good at. And just keep that in mind. Keep in mind their development. Everyone, including yourself as a manager, wants to grow. I mean, most people don't just want to stay in one role forever. So keep that in mind in your one-on-ones, and have regular one-on-ones. I've heard some people say like, oh, my manager keeps canceling. I mean, that's something to bring up with your manager if that happens, is, it's really valuable for me to have this time with you. So make sure that happens too as a leader, is spend that time one-on-one just talking about that person and what they need to talk about. Not necessarily like check off work in that meeting. It's more just like, how are things going? Are you excited about the work? Things like that.
So good back to basics advice.
Yeah, it is a lot of basics, but I think we forget it sometimes.
Yeah, as I say, common sense is not so common.
Right.
Okay, so Shirin, moving on. You've spoken quite a bit about positioning, and
Mhm.
you seem to be helping quite a few companies with positioning their products as well. I think positioning is a complex concept, and quite a few people think positioning is it's not easy. Uh, Now, if you were to define positioning for a layman, how would you go about defining it?
Yeah. So the way I describe positioning is the who, what, and why of your product. So who is it for? What is the actual product as far as really breaking down the features and the benefits? And why are you unique in the market? That's your differentiators. All of that work then comes down to a positioning statement. So that's the most simple definition I give. Your who, what, why of your product is your positioning.
Is that it? Can you give a couple of examples about how an
Yeah.
entrepreneur can position this product, and how can they fill up these who, what, and why?
Yes. So as far as your who, you're really thinking about, I would advise one target persona to start. Being very specific about one. You can't be everything to everybody. That's where confusion comes in the market. But who is that one persona, and what are their pain points? So in a positioning doc that I work on, you identify the persona, their characteristics, what are their key challenges and pain points that you're going to help solve, and then benefits of working, high level benefits. This is all in a document that I lay out, but benefits of working with you or with the company. What are you going to help them with? And then we get into really specific features, literally a column of all the key features, benefit statements for each one. And then core differentiators. I would say there should not be 20 core differentiators. There should be a few really key reasons why you are better than the competitor. So all of this gets mapped out in a document before you write your positioning statement. And the positioning statement is, if we've seen online, many different templates for it, but who your audience is, what they're looking for, what your product is, and why you're unique. That all goes into a few different sentences.
Got it. Thanks a ton for that. And at what stage do you think companies should take this seriously?
Positioning,
Yeah, and when should they do this formal exercise? Because I
pretty
think,
early.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think founders themselves have that in their mind, but it's not tangible. I'm pretty sure the intern hired in most companies would not know how the company is positioned. So, at what stage do you think they should go about formalizing this?
Very early. So similar to when you hire your first product marketer, I would say when you're in that stage of the product and the target persona relatively clear, you should start your positioning. And the first thing I would say a product marketing person should do is that again, could be 5 people at the company, it could be 20, and they just haven't done that work yet. And really important with positioning is to get alignment very early from all the key members. And I mean, share it with them, make sure everybody agrees, because messaging comes from that. Sales tools come from that. You have to have everything line up with your position in the market. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of confusion. So honestly, I don't think it's really too early to start positioning. And another point I want to make is positioning is not one time and done. There's always going to be different versions of positioning, and you always need to be able to review it and update it as you go.
I got it. I understand that. And I think positioning is also important to document because it forces you to think not just from inside out, from outside in as well, and really figure out where you fit in the whole market, especially from a customer's point of view.
Great.
Uh, now let's talking about positioning as a product marketer, right? Now, how should a product marketer go about with the positioning exercise? Now, you spoke about the three different why, what, and who, but I also feel like product marketers have a tough time understanding the market, understanding the product. So, do you want to shed light on how you go about understanding a new client that you get? How do you understand the market they operate in?
Yeah.
Because if there is a playbook that can be used to shorten that time, then a lot more effort and time can go towards thinking how to position the product.
Yeah. So especially as a consultant, I have to do this part pretty quickly. So what I do is I actually send out a survey internally, and I send it out to all the internal stakeholders, and I ask a lot of questions around what problems are we solving, who are we solving them for, what are the pain points in order to solve this. So that's my way of gathering the information in order to do that. And I need to do that within a couple of weeks because I have to work on the positioning. So for me personally, I need to rely on the team. The team first is your best resource. Who has that information, and talk to a few of them. And then if you need more information, it's really about looking at the competitors, looking at the market overall, who's doing what, how are they positioning themselves, because you want to position yourself a little bit differently usually. So I look at those two together.
Got it. I think asking the team is a great start. And there's one thing that I've done that I feel is a good way to understand the market. It's to do a competitive analysis and a feature comparison,
Mm-hmm.
and putting out a very elaborate detailed sheet. I think that's such a good crash course in knowing where you are and where the competitors are. And this is not just a feature comparison. You can go down to understand the kind of tone they've used, the imagery they've used,
Mm-hmm.
really understand what different companies are trying to sell. It's an arduous exercise, but I think it's the best crash course to understand a certain market and also
Yep.
figure out uh, who's occupying which ladder and where you really need to step in.
I agree. I do think when you do a deep competitive analysis, you need to know what you're looking for. So you need to have some hypothesis around your positioning before you do that.
Right,
Otherwise, you're just looking at everything about the product.
right.
But a hypothesis about what you're solving for, and then see how they're doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yes, that's really helpful. So, what do you think are some of the common mistakes that people do while they go about the positioning exercise?
I would say starting too late, not documenting it, not sharing it with others and getting feedback, and not reviewing it, let's say quarterly or every couple of years. I do think it should be reviewed. Those are probably my top mistakes I've seen.
Got it. And what about getting consensus from other people? How do you think we should go about that?
So I think the best way to get consensus, or what I've seen, this is after trial and error, is set up individual meetings to get feedback on positioning. Because a lot of times if you put everyone in a room, they're either all going to agree or all going to disagree. So get individual input. Say, what do you think? What do you think? And then bring them together. Say, oh, I actually met with everybody already individually. I incorporated their feedback. This is where we are. Nobody can then really say, oh, that's incorrect. It's like, well, we actually met about this, and this is the feedback you gave me. So I recommend individually with key people. Maybe it's a head of product, head of sales, head of marketing, maybe a couple others, your own manager, and get that consensus individually first.
How democratic is the positioning exercise, or is it an autocratic experiment?
Oh, I mean, it's democratic, but at some point you need to make a decision. Um, I think I see a lot when there's two or three different personas you're going after. It's like, well, let's try our hardest to pick one. So democratic, but at some point we need to have a deadline to decide. But
Got
definitely
it.
democratic in the beginning. You need everybody's input.
Makes sense. Uh, because I think it's a subjective matter, and I think people might have different approaches to this. But I think we can write a book about it sometime later.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, moving on from positioning, without going on to product launches, especially from a product marketing side,
Yes.
how can one ensure that the product launch isn't a disaster?
Yeah. So as far as product launches, I think there's a few tips that I would give for a really successful product launch. So one is start very early and bring together a cross-functional team. So you need people from marketing, a couple from sales, even from support, bring them together. Uh, Two, get to know the product really well. You can't start planning for a launch unless you get to know the product yourself as a product marketer. Three, I really like to say is be organized. I have a dashboard. Anyone that knows me has seen it. And I track everything by team that everybody has to do leading up for a launch. And then lastly, I also really advocate getting people excited. So one thing we did at my last company was we had a party before the launch. This was obviously time in person, but we had a bunch of people get together just to get excited about what's coming, because then people tend to be more motivated and want to work together when they've already had fun together and bonded about it. So it doesn't have to always be a party, but find an opportunity to get everybody else really excited. These are, again, more like soft skill stuff, getting people together, launch framework, but I think they actually really impact success of a release.
Got it. Thanks a lot for this, Shirin. So as we wind down the webinar, one last question. What's the best piece of advice you received?
Oh, I mean, that's always a really hard question for me. So I'm going to, if it's okay, answer a little bit differently, is maybe advice I've heard, not necessarily directly at me, is it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I still tell myself that as well. So you're not always going to know the answer. You're not always going to be comfortable saying no to a project. You're not always going to be comfortable presenting to a large group, but that's okay. And the more you do it, I've had to practice this, you will get comfortable. And there are a lot of uncomfortable moments when you're juggling so many different things with different people.
Got it. Thanks a ton for that.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll see you around. And how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So my email, anyone can definitely email me, is I am Shirin Shahin. It's ShirinShahin@gmail.com. And that's a way to get in touch.
Yes. Thank you, Shirin. Take care.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's been a pleasure hosting you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.